I'm going to be talking a little bit about the rising independent video game scene and the communities that surround it as an active fan of several recent independent games. And specifically, I'm going to talk about a game called Journey, which was developed by that game company in 2012. That game company signed an exclusive deal with Sony to make 3 games, including Journey, which would be published and released on the PlayStation Store. And all 3 of these games were groundbreaking titles in the independent game scene, and Journey in particular became extremely popular after it won several Game of the Year awards. The reason that Journey and that game company are so innovative is because they strive to evoke really fundamental emotions from the player by making games that are very simple and intuitive in style, and their status as an independent game developer helps them maintain a small amount of employees. Journey only started with a production team of 7 people, and eventually they decided to bring 11 more people, making that number 18, but 18 is still a relatively small number compared to most video game development companies. These really small numbers allow them to avoid making the overly complex games that most development teams are making today. It's become kind of a stigma in video games that the more complex the game is, the more complex the gameplay, the more complex the storyline, the better the game will be. But that's not necessarily true at all. And I think that game company strives to prove that with all of their games. It goes without saying that indie developers don't have all the benefits of being supported by a giant corporation, but that's exactly what gives indie games their appeal. Just like Hollywood films can be easily manipulated and standardized by large studios, video games is an extremely standardized industry. So when independent developers are able to create games without anyone looming over their shoulder, it eliminates some of the standardization and allows for content that's true to the vision of the artist. And I think freedom is the most important thing for an artist to have, even more so than any benefit that money can provide. Now, obviously, Sony is a huge corporation and they were allowed exclusive publishing rights, but in this particular case, Sony allowed several extensions on the game's release date and they had very little control over the game's content. And this is due mostly to the fact that that game company's founders, Keely Santiago and Genova Chen, developed an independent game called Cloud while they were studying at USC with a grant from the school. So they started as an independent game company, and even though Journey was made under contract with Sony, I'm including it in the discussion of independent games because of its popularity, despite the fact that it's not standardized. And since that game company's contract is over with Sony, they're officially independent again. In regard to participation from fans and the communities that surround Journey, this is the first time that a dialogue has formed about the influence indie developers could have on the video gaming industry in the future. Once indie games are viewed by the mass gaming culture as being on par with standardized games, the industry will change forever. Publishers might yield some of their control to developers, and that allows for games to be more of an art form and less of a product. And if we take any credit in Adorno's theory of standardization, this will certainly benefit the massive fan community surrounding the video game industry.